Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by Bet365. We are coming to you from the Pacific Toyota Dealers Studios. Visit shoptoyota.ca or visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. My name is Dave Quadrelli. I am joined by Harmon Dial, a Friday edition of Canucks Conversation. Harmon, guess what? We've got some games to talk about as the Vancouver Canucks prospects will take on the Seattle Kraken prospects this weekend in Seattle. I'm just going to say it. I'm excited. I'm going to watch it. I'm excited to see Dave Hall's coverage over at Canucks Army. I know we're going to get some good stuff with him heading down to Seattle. I'm very disappointed that there's no Young Stars anymore. I know Dave is too, but this just doesn't have the same feel as Young Stars. Like, Young Stars had a buzz about it. It did. And this, I'm excited, but I don't think a lot of people are very excited for this. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a little bit different for sure. I mean, Penticton was just such a different vibe, especially so many Canucks fans being from the area, multiple different teams. It was a proper tournament. And so it wasn't just the Canucks prospects that you got to see, but a lot of top prospects from other teams. I remember a couple of years ago being in Penticton to cover the tournament, and it was so cool seeing Cole Perfetti at that tournament.
Yeah.
And it gives you a bar, right, for some of these other prospects, because Perfetti was expected to make the Jets NHL team as a full-time player that year. And to have that, like, okay, this is what a high pedigree, highly drafted first-round pick who is NHL bound this season, this is what he looks like. It sets the bar to then compare other prospects to that you even see on the Canucks, where you could see a player like Perfetti was so head and shoulders above the rest. But then you could sort of see, for example, I remember at that tournament, I think it might have been the first time we saw Nils Aman, and he had just signed out of Sweden, and Drancer and I were looking at his tools and going, this guy's further along than we might imagine, and he could factor in and be a difference maker, whether it's in the AHL or contend for an NHL roster spot. And that's what ended up happening. Whereas I think in this tournament, obviously Seattle still has some amazing prospects, but you don't have as many teams. It's not 4 teams, so there aren't as many reference points to compare it to.
And also, there's 2 games. Each team plays each other once, and then you do, or I guess they got rid of the finals thing later in the later years, but you had at least 3 games. You had 4 games some years. Saturday and Sunday are this year's games, and the excitement, I don't just mean among Canucks fans and among Canucks media. Like, I saw Ryan Henderson tweet this out as well. There's tons of tickets available for this game. And I mean, even with Braden Coots, who's, loved in Seattle Thunderbirds, not drawing a ton of crowd. I'm just going to say it. Abbotsford needs to host this every year because the Canucks fans would show up for this. This game would be sold out.
I think that's the plan for next year, right?
This year? Yeah, they're going to alternate. They're going to alternate.
Yeah. But I think it was only a 2-year deal. So they were going to do this year in Seattle. Next year, they're going to do 2 games in Abbotsford. And that's the end of this deal. And look, we saw Young Stars get resurrected before. Maybe it gets resurrected again, and Seattle is a part of it. And maybe Winnipeg doesn't come, or one of the Alberta teams doesn't come, but hopefully we see Young Stars again.
Yeah, and Jacob, I saw you put it in our YouTube chat as well. You laid it out. Canucks head to Seattle, Edmonton, Calgary do their own thing now, and Winnipeg, of course, those are all the Young Stars teams. They're heading to Minnesota's tournament. So whatever, I get it. Geographically, I get it, but it was really fun to see the prospects out in Penticton. Nonetheless, it's going to be fun this weekend, and there's some stuff that we could take away. I am Big Doggy in the chat said Willander DPD pairing is juicy. What are you most excited for this weekend? I know we've been talking about this, but honestly, like, for me, it's Medvedev. I've said this a few times. I want to see Medvedev in game action. Really, really looking forward to seeing him play. But Willander DPD, there's another one. What are you looking forward to, Harm?
Just that top line in general. Right, Braden Coots, Jonathan Lecker-Mackey, those are 2 guys that can absolutely rip the puck. Now, they're both sort of more shoot-first players rather than playmakers, so I'm interested to see whether they're able to click right away chemistry-wise. But it's not just those 2 guys. I'm so excited to see Vilmer Ulriksson on that line, just 6'6" body. Every time I've seen him at a prospects tournament or in training camp, he just stands out. Not just because of the size, but the physicality that he plays with. And at last year's tournament, I felt that he had taken steps towards becoming a little bit more coordinated, a little bit less sloppy of a skater, right? Because when you're that size, it's hard to be as coordinated and as sort of refined with your skill set as players that are let's say around 6 foot. He looked so raw the first time, but last year you saw, all right, this is a step in the right direction. And of course it earned him an entry-level contract. It's going to be fun to see the two skilled guys on the line, like Romani and Kuts doing their thing. And then big Vilmer just galloping in on the forecheck, going to the net.
And that dude's got hands. Like, that's the thing about Ulriksson that nobody seems to really realize. And Dave, I think Dave will back me up on this. Ulriksson's got sneaky good hands. Like, he's really good in tight, partly because he has really, really good hands. Yes, it helps that he's 6'6", 234. What a beast, first of all. But yeah, like, he's got the hands in tight. I know it's not a hot take to say at this point the guy signed an ELC, but this could be like already a 4th round pick signing an ELC. He's got me excited for sure. He might be a guy that can play in the NHL bottom 6 one day.
Yeah, another player that I think is flying under the radar a little bit because on the back end, there's going to be understandably so much attention and focus on Willander and DPD. And we know how good Kudryavtsev is, but Sawyer Minyo, he is going to take the jump from the WHL to Abbotsford in the AHL this year. And flat out, he was one of the best defensemen in the WHL the last couple of years. He really grew into a substantial role because when he was drafted late in the 3rd round in 2023, he was sort of playing on the stacked Seattle Thunderbirds team that won the WHL championship. And I think because of that, he flew under the radar a little bit because he was like a number 5 defenseman on that team where he was only really killing penalties and playing in a specialized role because, I mean, that Seattle blue line was stacked with Kevin Korchinski, Luke Prokop, I believe. There were just so many guys ahead of him. I think the Canucks saw the potential in him. And once some of those guys like Korchinski graduated and other guys went to play elsewhere, Minyo immediately became the guy who was logging 25 minutes a night. And that's where D+1 season, he broke out with 16 points and 16 goals and 53 points in a huge way offensively. But like, that's a good sign in terms of his calling card is always going to be the defensive side and his rugged physicality. But you want to see defensemen in their D+1 season still produce, because the classic example, and I know Drancer brought this one up before, even a guy like Dan Hamhuis, who was a pure defensive defenseman at the NHL level, he was a big time point producer in junior, right? You think about Jet Wu, he was always billed as a defensive defenseman. Even for him to become a good AHL defenseman, like, the bar is so high that when you're in junior and such few guys make it to being a successful pro hockey player, that even if you're a defensive defenseman, like Jet Wu was a big time point producer in the WHL in this draft+1 season. So you want to see that statistical profile, which we saw from Minyo. Obviously made the Canadian World Junior team last winter, which was a nice sign. And now we're going to see him in Abbotsford. I think he's quietly been one of their fastest rising prospects since the Canucks drafted him a couple of years ago.
All right, let's bring in Dave Hall. Dave Hall is going to be there this weekend. We're going to chat with Dave. He's brought to you by our friends over at Greta, which by now you know is a great spot to watch the big game. And by now you might also know, because I've said it so many times, that it's an even better spot for your upcoming party or event. If you need a venue for a team building or summer/fall social event, check out Greta. They've got the street view menu, they've got the arcade, and of course they've got the bar. Always a fun time with plenty of options. Make Greta your spot for your next event. For more info and to book your event, go to gretabar.com. Greta Bar, YVR 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Also should mention the events. We're going to be back with the events this year. The first email of picking dates for the events went out yesterday. So we're going to be having our events again this year, our watch parties at Greta. All right, let's bring in Dave. We hope we have Dave. He says it's glitchy, and Dave is moving and looks like it's strobe lighting right now. Oh my gosh, and he's leaning into it. Dave, I think we can hear you though. So how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. It's preseason for me as well, so I don't know what my laptop's doing here, but here it is.
Try not to move. Just try not to move as best you can, but answer our questions.
Yeah,
how excited are you for Seattle? We were just talking about who we were most looking forward to this weekend. You answer that question. Who are you most excited to see up close and personal this weekend?
Oh, I'm as excited as you can be. There's a little brisk feeling in the air. It's hockey season. It's the time to get too excited about everything. And I mean, I can't lie. I think Harm alluded to it, and I can't agree more. For me, it's that top line, just the whole top line of Lekkerimäki, Ulriksson, and Coots. Especially excited to see Coots, but I just think you can't. You can't. Yeah, that line is just too good to pass up.
I wanted to dive deeper with you on Lekkerimäki a little bit, because it sort of feels like the way that his AHL playoff run went, and not necessarily being a big point producer, which context matters. He had the invasive dental procedure that sort of set him back, and I think that's really important context. Plus, it was just a really long campaign moving from Sweden to North America. I think people are maybe underestimating Lekkerimäki a tad bit, not necessarily in terms of what he can accomplish this season, but just his overall big picture potential. And to some degree, I can understand it, because he's a smallish winger. He needs to beef up. And when we saw him at the NHL level, there's clearly work. He's clearly a work in progress.
Yeah.
But when I step back and look at last season for Lekkerimäki, you're talking about his age 20 season. He scored more than half a goal per game in the AHL. And when you look at the statistical comps for that, players who do that usually become top 6 wingers in the NHL one day. And even, yeah, he wasn't a huge impact difference maker in the NHL, but when you're 20 years old, even just to stick in the NHL and to hold your own, knowing that, again, you're 20 years old, first season in North America, and your defensive game wasn't a worry. I think when you step back, there was a lot more to be excited about in terms of Lekkerimäki's season last year than maybe the market realizes. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree. Like you nailed so many points there. Like, people seem to forget that he just turned 21 this summer. That was by far the longest season he had ever played by tenfold. I forget how many games over. I knew this back in June, but it's been a while since I've looked. But it was a long season for him, and that's a big physical jump as well, going from the Swedish league to the NHL and AHL. So, that's a long season. And so, I think people forget that there's still time for him to kind of grow and adjust to the game. And I just think we saw a lot, as you alluded to. He scored goals at a clip that was, pretty unparalleled in comparison to many 19-year-old, 20-year-olds in the league that were playing with him. So I don't think we're anywhere near close to pushing the panic button. Yes, he might not be ready to play NHL this fall, but I don't think that's all out of the ordinary. He just turned 21. I think everything is fine in my opinion. So I fully agree. You nailed all the points right there for all those reasons. There's no worry at all. Let's hope that he stands out this weekend and he has a nice weekend amongst these prospects, because these are the kind of showcases that you do want to see him kind of pop in, and that goes with a couple of other players as well. But I just think overall as a prospect, I don't think there's any need to be hitting the panic button.
I want to move away from the Seattle showcase for a second. I'm sure we'll come back to it. It's okay if we come back to it. But I want to ask you basically what our poll question is today, Dave. It's about Ratu, and I'm asking people to give me an estimate of what they think he will do in terms of point production this season in the NHL. This is a guy that looks like he's going to start on a third line.
Yep.
The high end of it, I kind of set the bar at like 40 plus. Like that's a high end season for Ratu. Where do you see him coming in? And really, aside from just answering the question with a number, like, how do you think his season's going to go this year?
Yeah, I agree. I do think he's a shoe-in to make the team. He's a face-off ace. He can kill penalties that we've seen in AHL. So, and he's obviously now the waiver status kind of complicates things. So I think, no, for sure he's going to make the team. I personally don't know if he's going to hit that 40-point plateau and, cross that. If not for the fact that I just don't think he's going to get that kind of opportunity. I don't see him. He might sniff PP2 perhaps, but I see him as more of a third, if not fourth line player this year. And so, typically those players, it's hard for them, especially as a rookie, to eclipse that 40-point plateau. So, I can see him somewhere around I would put, somewhere between the 20 to 30 point mark. I think that's a reasonable number for him. I just don't know, we haven't even seen him pop much over the 40 point at the American League level yet, right? So, I think to ask him to do that at the NHL level, I just still think there's some stuff to work on. And unfortunately, he not only did the Calder Cup go till late June, but he suffered an injury. So his offseason has been super short to even work on that skating that we all know, and he's well aware as well that it's something that he needs to work on, especially if he's going to stick it up as a third, fourth line center at the NHL level. So I think that's high. I'm putting on the very low end. I'm thinking a 20 point to 25 point, 30 maybe as the kind of the target that we hope for.
Do you think he has the potential to grow into being this kind of ace defensive specialist? We know he's already elite in the faceoff dot. And I think about Pia Suter's departure and could there be some PK opportunities? Yep. Has he mastered the defensive game at the AHL so impressively that you think the organization could maybe even look at Ratu as a penalty killer at the NHL level and maybe being a defensive first kind of center?
I think at the very least he's going to have to make that pivot. I think you kind of nailed it I think that's the kind of niche that he's going to fulfill. I think by now, he's still not a finished product by any means, but I think, we could probably safely say that he's probably not going to be that offensive pedigree player that we maybe thought that he was when he was 16 and, garnering top 5 overall pick status. So I think, can he? We'll see. I think that's definitely something that the organization does think. It seems by all indications that the organization is quite high on him and, think that he can be that defensive center. And, there's something to be said about an offensive ace penalty kill guy. I mean, look at Manny Malhotra himself, right? So I do think there is potential, and I do think he can carve out a nice little fourth line, maybe third line center role.
I don't even have to ask you any more questions because the chat has a bunch for you. So let's go through them. Let's go through what the chat's got for you. Let's go with Big Hog Hockey's here. He said, any sleeper prospects who will be at this tournament?
Well, I don't know about sleeper because I always talk about them, but I'm going. I want to see what Riley Patterson does this weekend and this year.
That was Big Doggy's question is how's Riley Patterson looking?
Yeah, and I think I'm very interested only because he was just traded from the Barrie Colts to the Niagara Ice Dogs. While that doesn't really matter, he was still going to be, a top end guy. What I like is it seems like Niagara is going to give him more of an opportunity to play up the middle, and he is a right shot, hopefully center. And so in Barrie, he played, he took faceoffs here and there in the defensive zone and whatnot, but he was by no means playing center. So I think by all indications, it sounds like Niagara is going to give him that opportunity. And, it doesn't take long to look at the Vancouver Canucks detriment in the prospect pool, and that's up the middle. So if he can move into the middle and carve out a nice niche there, I think that instantly props him up a little higher into the prospect pool. And so he is a player that I'm hoping to see a little more from this year. Again, he hasn't been given the keys to the Barrie Colts lineup. So I'm hoping now in Niagara, he can kind of ease into that top line center role and just really have a big bust out season. Cause he is a player that I'm going to be watching pretty closely this year.
With Tom Willander, how immediate do you think his defensive game could translate to, let's say, the NHL level? Because one thing I've been bouncing around in my mind is when I watched him in the NCAA, it seems like the way that he makes defensive stops a lot of times is because of his skating, which of course will translate, but also his authoritative defensive play where he outmuscles guys, he wins battles, he's got a high motor and compete level. It's not so much that he's this Chris Tanev like defensive genius where his anticipation and reads are the elite way that he's able to make defensive stops. So with that in mind, I was thinking about at the NHL level, the jump in terms of physicality and how much bigger and stronger the forwards are. And Willander, it surprised me just seeing him listed. He's been listed in some places at like 6'1", 179. So he's not the biggest guy. Do you think there could be an adjustment period for him to learn how to translate his defensive game to the NHL level?
I do. And I will say I was surprised with a lot of those listed numbers. I'm not going to lie. Even a guy like Vilmar Ulrichsen, he was listed at like 214, I think it was. And by my account, I believe he's up to 235. So who knows with those listings, but yeah, I mean, you're right. Verlander is kind of that, I'm gonna beat you at all costs kind of guy. He's not so much systems as he is just pure will and heart, right? Like if a guy gets by him, he's gonna do what he can and utilize that skating ability that he has to make sure that he just gets you out of that slot. He wants to keep it to the outside. He wants to do all that. So I agree. I do think he's gonna have some tweaking to do, and that I think goes with most of his game, not just the defensive. I think that's, his transition and his offense. I still think he's going to have to kind of adjust. And, I believe, he just had an interview too, where he kind of showed that, there was an adjustment already for him going from the Swedish level to the NCAA. And now he's going to have to do that to the pro level. And, that comes with adjusting to the number of games, much like we saw with Lecker and Mackey last year. So I think there is going to be a transition. I think the Canucks are going to give him every opportunity to make this team, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to be shocked at all to see him in Abbotsford to be that number one guy and kind of working on those things, because I do think some systems work is going to have to be embedded into his game just to get a better feel for that defensive game, because I do agree that he is, although it's very impressive, he is kind of just stop you at all costs and less systems kind of guy right now. So
this one's from Lefty All Around. Talking about the third young defenseman here. What is your opinion on Victor Mancini? Personally, I think he has all the physical tools to stick in the NHL, but his quick decisions in his own end are not there.
Yeah, I thought Mancini was an interesting one for me as the Calder Cup went on. I thought he was lights out in the first couple of rounds. He was just standing out like crazy. He was a horse back there. I thought he kind of slowed down a little bit as the playoffs went on. That's not to say he wasn't impressive, but he lost his power play time to Kirill Kudryavtsev, a rookie, and just stuff like that. So I think by the end of the Calder Cup, you kind of got to see why he really hasn't yet fully broke out to the NHL. I still think he's going to be, his skating and his size are good enough that I think he's probably going to, he's going to be a third line defenseman at the very least. I've never really been so sold that I think he's going to be that top end, top four kind of guy. So for me, I've always pegged him as that third line defenseman, and I think right now he's on track. I still, much like Verlander though, I don't know if he's quite ready to just step in and be the guy yet, but I think he's going to be a solid call-up option.
Transfer and I just did our top 10 prospects list over at the Athletic, and one of the under the radar guys that cracked the bottom end of that top 10 list, who we thought was pretty intriguing, is Anthony Romani. And I know you've spent time talking about him, but just looking at his profile and his game, this is a player that 2 years ago led the OHL with 58 goals, and yeah, he did it as an overager, but as a late summer birthday, he was barely an overager. And last year, of course, his year was interrupted by injury, but had a strong playoffs again, going to Michigan State University this year. He already seems to have an NHL caliber shot. What can you tell fans who maybe aren't as familiar with Romani's game about how he looks as a prospect and what the road forward for him could look like?
I think this year is going to be, this is going to be one of the benefits for prospects as a whole. You're right. He double, overager, but more of just a double entry rather than overager. Because like you said, he was so close to the cutoff date, but we've seen when he did come back, he was amazing in it. I forget what the streak was, but it was something absurd, like 20 something games at the point in his return. So it's clear that he's above and beyond the junior level, but he was that tweener guy that wasn't maybe fully ready to the AHL. So I'm very interested to see what he does on this Michigan State team. I think this year in the NCAA is going to be a big turn. The thing that I worry about Romani's game is he's not, I don't want to call him one dimensional and just his shot is that one thing. I just don't know. What I'd like to see is just if he can create a little more dynamicism in his game. There's just a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Preseason right now. I'm trying to look for all my buzzwords, right? But it's just a lot of his goals tend to be kind of the same, where it's a lot of off the rush and just you got a sweet pass and he makes a really nice shot to get it past the goalie. But I would just like to see a little bit more dynamicism in his game, and he's just a little bit stationary. So I think that's going to be me working on the skating is going to be a big thing for me. And if he can, he's got all the offensive tools and the mind to work it. I just think right now, especially as he goes over into the pro level, I think it's just going to be adding that next level of speed and dynamicism into his game. I think to kind of just propel that offense, because you're not going to be getting him for defense. He's definitely going to be an offensive guy. And so I just think if you can up his level, and that's why I'm very interested to see how he does against these 23, 22, 24-year-old players, to see if he can make that next step in his skating.
Dave, great stuff as always. We're looking forward to reading what you come up with this weekend over at CanucksArmy.com. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry about me being a robot, but I appreciate you having me on.
You sound great. There you go. Dave Hall, our prospect guy over at CanucksArmy.com, who, like I said, is heading down to Seattle tomorrow morning. He'll be covering this showcase, whatever you want to call it, for us at CA. Nobody does prospects better than Dave Hall. Blackfish next week is going to be a doozy, I am sure. All right, let's get to our poll question. I brought it up during that interview with Dave, and the reason I want to talk about Ratu is that I wrote about Ratu. This is going out on Saturday at Canucks Army. So if you listen to the podcast, if podcast past Saturday 9 a.m., you can go read it. That's when it drops on CanucksArmy.com. But basically how this piece started was I was looking at Ratu, and what I wanted to see is, has there been an NHLer in the modern era who fits the profile of Ratu that took the step that the Canucks are asking him to take? But then it kind of turned into more of a, let's look at comparables for what Ratu is. And you always bring up the Lekkerimäki comparables, that guys who produce like Lekkerimäki at the AHL level more often than not become bona fide top 6 wingers in the NHL. But what about Ratu? Like, guys who fit the profile of Ratu, what do they usually become? And basically what I landed on is that the answer is almost always they're going to be a third line center, fourth line center, mostly third line is what I found, though, when you're scoring as much as Ratu did at the AHL level. Now, the one name that I really landed on, and go look at his Hockey DB page if you can, folks, and I'll talk about it, but the one name I really found was David Desharnais with the Montreal Canadiens. Now, he played 6 years with the Habs. I got to pull up his DB stats again here, but he played 6 years with the Habs, but where they really become a really good comparable is what they did in the AHL at the same age. I think Desharnais was actually a year ahead of Ratu in all of this, but the point stands that in his first full season in the AHL, because he played a year in the ECHL, obviously Ratu didn't. First full year in the AHL, he put up 58 points in 77 games. Ratu put up like 52 and 72 or something like that. Really, really, really similar numbers. And then the following year, he was over a point per game. Ratu wasn't quite there. So basically what I landed on is that at best, Ratu is going to be David Desharnais. Like, that's a great, great scenario for Ratu. Again, Desharnais, don't forget, put up 60 points in a season, 52 points in a season. I was talking with noted Habs fan Jacob Lazar, our producer, about Desharnais. Desharnais was basically the center version of Connor Garland, and not just because he was 5'7". Usually he played on the third line, but in spot duty, he would go up to the top 6 and he would be able to produce there as well. Now, Desharnais obviously was a really good skater. So the stylistic comp isn't what we're talking about here. We're talking about production-wise. The comparison between them, it's so similar what they were able to do at the AHL level. Again, at a bit of an older age. They're not coming in and doing this when they're 20, 21 years old at the AHL level. I really like this comp. This is the one that I landed on. I think Ratu at best can be David Desharnais.
Yeah, I've always looked at it. I not just for the statistical comparison reasons, but also just looking at Ratu's skill set. I've never really looked at him as having bona fide top 6 potential. The skating is well below average, even though it has improved considerably over the last couple of years. I don't see enough dynamic elements to his game, and I don't think he's going to really thrive as a playmaker enough to where he can produce consistently at a top 6 caliber level. But that's okay. Even if he becomes a quality bottom 6 center, he's a guy that has size, is elite in the faceoff dot, and can play that chippy, physical sort of game, and still has enough skill that he could contribute some secondary offense. He has a very projectable game, and even as a bottom 6 NHL centerman, he could become a very important part of this Canucks team moving forward.
Other names I found, Brian Boyle There's another one. Brian Boyle mentioned. Didn't expect that today. Thomas Plekanec was another one. Tyler Bozak. Those were the kind of the other three that I looked at and was like, okay, like there's some similarities there, but those are flawed comparisons for various reasons. There's David Desharnais, man. That DB page could look identical in 5 years' time because right now it's pretty damn close. So David Desharnais, that was my big comparable for Ratu. Again, like that is a fine comparable for Ratu. And hey, what Desharnais was able to do, like I just talked about, was able to play top six in spot duty. Ideally, that's what you want your third line center to be. And the Canucks haven't had that for a while, right? Like you look at Teddy Bluger, you don't want Teddy Bluger playing in a top six. And I'm not saying right now, yeah, it'd be great if Ratu was in the top six, but that's kind of where the Canucks are heading into this season. So that's why the article started as, this is what the Canucks are asking him to do. Has anyone ever done it? The answer is David Desharnais. But really, it then turned into something just more looking at comparables. But in our poll question, I wanted to look at Ratu's season. And hang on, someone just gave me Charlie Coyle. Said Charlie Coyle's a good comparable. So now I need to make sure I didn't miss anything. I need to look up Charlie Coyle's.
I'll just jump in with Desharnais. Like, so the season he put up 60. I went back and double checked. So that was the year that Mike Camilleri got hurt. I think he only played a quarter of the season. So Camilleri came into the year as the 1C, playing with Pacioretty. Plekanec was the 2C, and then 3C was Desharnais, 4C was Lars Eller. That was actually a pretty good group of four centers. But after that injury, it wasn't necessarily Plekanec that just moved up to the 1C. They basically gave Desharnais that spot for good chunks of the season, playing with Pacioretty, who obviously led the Habs in scoring that year. So when I talk about like him moving up and down seamlessly, that's what I mean. And he was also a pretty solid playoff performer. He would score big goals. I mean, I remember that year with Edmonton and McDavid's first playoff run. I think he scored the goal that sent them to the West Final, if I'm not mistaken. So if that's what you get out of Ratu, just a solid defensive center who, when you need 15 games in the top six because a guy's hurt, he can step up and give you like 8 or 9 points in those 15 games. Like that's perfect. That's exactly what you want out of your 3C.
Sure. And where was in the chat? Dan Jardine in the chat said if Ratu can get 30 to 40 points a season, he's a solid 3C. Maybe not this year, but like, yeah, if that's your that's where you're hanging out, everyone's happy with that. S. Little Boston brought up Charlie Coyle. I looked up Charlie Coyle. It's not like it's a decent comparison, but Coyle was playing in the NHL at 20 years old, right? So that's kind of what I was looking at, is a guy who's a bit of a late bloomer, played some years in the AHL, put up similar production to what Ratu's done in the AHL in his age 21, age 22 season, as he heads into age 23. So Coyle, I didn't love that comparison, but yeah, it's a decent one.
The big distinguishing factor there is that draft plus 4 season in the 2013-14 campaign, Coyle put up 30 points in 70 games. That would have been the equivalent of Ratu's last season at the same age, where he split. So Coyle would have been a better comparable if Ratu had put up 30 points in 70 games last year as a full-time NHL player.
But
he was obviously split NHL and NHL. Yeah, that's what you're looking for now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So can he beat Charlie Coyle? Maybe.
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. But let's get to our poll question, which is about Ratu, and it's about his season this year. Pull it up, Jacob. Ratu this season. How many NHL points will he put up this season? Our options were under 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, and 40 plus. Leading the way with 50.4% of the vote is 20 to 30 points. 27.9% of voters say 30 to 40, 14.2% say under 20, and 7.4% of voters say 40 plus. I'm optimistic. I'm going to go 20 to 30 here. He's going to get the opportunity. He should be the first center to get the opportunity if someone in the top 6 goes down. I think there's a chance. 20 to 30. I'm going to go with that. The other thing to consider, though, how much have we been talking about? Oh, well, they'll get a center in season, right? If the team's competitive, they'll go get a center. That's not good news for Ratu. That's going to bump him down the depth chart. So I'm still saying 20 to 30, but you have to keep that in mind as well, that he might not finish the season where he started it as this team's third line center.
If he hits 25 points this season, that's a win. Quite simply.
Absolutely.
Because you have to remember what Ratu does in his first full NHL season as a 23-year-old isn't necessarily his ceiling. Yeah. He's going to still improve incrementally, not necessarily with giant steps, but you can still expect incremental improvements in his sophomore, third, fourth NHL season. So if he establishes that floor at 25 as an NHL rookie, that'd be massive. And I think that would also be important. It's not just how many points does he put up, but simply you're an everyday full-time NHL player. You are trusted to play bottom 6 minutes. The coach doesn't have to heavily shelter you. Maybe he finds a role in the PK. That's going to be really key, is not just the point production, but really carving out that niche for himself, where Adam Foote looks at him as, this guy is indispensable to me. I need him in the lineup every game.
Another thing about Ratu is we've been talking about not all the holes, but like we've been talking about how the Canucks lost some penalty killers this year. There's your opportunity. Like, go seize that opportunity. Become the first guy over the words. We know you can win the draw, but what can you do after that? And he played that role for Abbotsford. That's a really underrated way for Ratu to have a really successful season. Again, it's not going to show up on the stats sheet necessarily, but like Derek Forbert, this market recognizes when you are an elite penalty killer, and everybody will recognize it if Ratu can become that. We know he's an elite faceoff guy, so go be that guy on the penalty kill as well. There's a path for Ratu to play a pretty big role on the Canucks this season.
I am interested to see whether he gets that opportunity, and it's something that we'll probably want to ask Adam Foote about at training camp, especially later whenever they roll out their PK units, because sometimes coaches can be a little bit hesitant to give younger players that opportunity, right? Remember Vasily Podkolzin? He was drafted and billed as this two-way guy, how tenacious he is defensively. How long? I mean, I shouldn't even say how long. He never got that opportunity in Vancouver. It wasn't until Edmonton last season, by the time he hit his mid-20s, that an NHL team finally trusted him to kill penalties, and we found out that, oh, okay, he can do it. And
which I was screaming for so long. I will say that. That's my not crowning achievement, but it's one of my things as a Canucks media member. I was saying forever. It's so much so, I think I asked Travis about it, I asked Bruce about it, and I asked Talkin about it. I was like, have you thought about the penalty kill? And all of them had the exact same answer. No, not really. Okay, anyways, go on.
And you can't always trust. Just because a guy killed penalties at the AHL doesn't necessarily mean that the organization views that prospect as having that potential in the NHL, because I can remember when Nikolai Goldobin was killing penalties down in Utica because they wanted him to really work on his defensive game. Now, obviously, Ratu isn't Nikolai Goldobin, but the point being, just because you're trusted with PK opportunity in the AHL doesn't necessarily mean that as a young guy, you're going to automatically earn that opportunity in the NHL.
I want to get to this. This is Dylan McDonald's comment. He said, Ratu went on a pretty decent hot streak near the end of last season, didn't he? I completely forget and could be wrong. You are not wrong. It was 5 goals and 2 assists in Ratu's final 12 games of the season. In the article, again, like I said, 9 a.m. tomorrow, Saturday, on CanucksArmy.com, I kind of go through his Canucks career so far, and really, like, last season, you see the games played total is really high. He was an offensive black hole for basically until he got that second call up at the end of March, or excuse me, at the start of March. When he played those final 12 games of the season, he didn't do anything before that. It was not good. It was 2 goals and 1 assist through 17 games over his first call up. Went back down to the AHL. Then he got called back up, yes, in late March. And in late March, when he played those 12 final games of the regular season, it was 5 goals and 2 assists. Now, obviously, the shooting percentage is going to be high. We know that. But what I really take away from that is he established himself as that face-off ace. And even just like getting involved in the rush, he looked so much better. And yeah, it was great that the point totals were there, but he didn't look out of place offensively when he came up that second time. And I think that was the big thing that I looked at and said, okay, this is a guy that might be able to play next year. And obviously Canucks management agreed with me.
I'm really curious to know what management and coaching staff's message for him is going to be heading into the season, as far as what kind of identity do they want from him, right? Because there are 2 kind of pathways for him to become that effective everyday NHL player. One is if the offense pops more regularly, the way it did towards the tail end of last season. And if he's a guy that can give you 25 to 30 points, that alone will be enough if there's that level of offensive juice. But barring that, there's still a pathway for him to carve out an everyday consistent role with this team as that sort of face-off guy, can be trusted defensively. And not just that, but as a 6'2" heavier body, can he, like, this is where I wonder if Adam Foote, part of that messaging is be hard to play against, be in guys' faces, make an impact on the forecheck, bump guys, just be an absolute pain in the neck to battle against, and add that to your repertoire, which we saw at times from Ratu. Because when coaches are filling out bottom six spots, they love players that have a distinct identity, that if you're not scoring, what else do you bring to the table? And Ratu has a really strong foundation there already with the faceoffs. And if you can add a consistent physical element to that as well, then, I mean, it won't even matter if he can't produce offense, because even on a fourth line, he's gonna be indispensable if he can win those draws and be physical and reliable defensively.
Any other Ratu conversation that we need to have? I think we're good. Lefty all around, unfortunately, is incorrect. Said nobody talks about Linus Karlsson except me. Put him on the power play, coach. His hockey IQ is very high. Now, lefty all around, I'm not sure how long you've been watching this show, but Harmon and I had one of the funniest interactions of all time last year at training camp about Linus Karlsson. Harmon, and you were right. You were trying to bring up Linus Karlsson, and you were trying to have conversations about Linus Karlsson, and I was just like, who cares? Why are we talking about Linus Karlsson? He's never making this team. I will say, at the time, basically my point was he wasn't going to make the team. He obviously didn't make the team, but it was worth having the conversation. I was wrong about that, because man, oh man, this guy's board work is something like, okay, we look at Arshdeep Bains, right? And I think I might have brought this up on a recent show, so I'm not trying to repeat myself too much, but like, we look at Arshdeep Bains and we see, okay, he's got some offensive chops at the AHL level, and when he plays at the NHL level, he has a good enough baseline game where he's not going to hurt you defensively, but like, that's not enough. You have to do more at the NHL level. Like NHL fourth liners can do more than that, right? Like, that's the bare minimum. That's the baseline. It's enough to not get your minutes cut, right? Linus Karlsson might be able to do more. Like, he's got that baseline game that coaches love, but he also has a little bit more to his game. Can he be an interior scorer like he was at the AHL level? Can he use that quick release? Can he use that big frame to get to the inside? That's a really intriguing profile for a guy that could become an NHL bottom six forward.
I love watching him down the stretch. And a lot of what he did looked sustainable and translatable. Not just the scoring, which, by the way, his hands around the net and with that sort of size and that small area skill, he could produce secondary offense at a reasonable bottom six NHL level, rather than being a complete black hole that you only put up 2 points in 20 games, right? So right off the bat, you know that, all right, there's some skill there, but as you alluded to, it's also with that size and the defensive details and the board work. We know the foot speed is obviously the thing that's held him back, but I thought that improved last season. And you're right, there are enough all around tools there to where I would love to see him make the team as a depth forward, even if it's as a 13th, 14th forward.
Now, don't forget, you talk about guys finishing strong. Linus Karlsson with the Vancouver Canucks before he went down to Abbotsford and absolutely ripped up the Calder Cup playoffs. What was it? Wasn't it like 2 goals? No, 4 points. 4 points in his final 7 games of the season. Dude was just heating up. And then he went down to Abbotsford and kept heating up. What do you mean it's over? That's what he must have been saying, right? When they were like, season's over. What do you mean it's over? I was just warming up. I was just getting going. Had that goal against San Jose Sharks. He's a name to watch this year. He's a guy that's going to make the team, I think. Like, I'm looking at it as like he is making this team.
That reminds me, I want to check what Jonathan Dahlen is up to, because remember when that trade was made and the outrage, and I'll be honest, this was, how old was I when this happened? Like 18
19,
or something?
We were like 19. Yeah, I was outraged.
I didn't like it. I thought Dahlen had legit
That's Petey's
skill.
best friend. Yeah, and Petey's best friend, man. What are you doing? Trading Petey's boy. That was going to be his line
He's
mate.
27 now.
Yeah,
My
dude, and I'll
goodness.
tell you, Jonathan Dahlen is still ripping it up with Timra. Good for Jonathan
Yeah.
Dahlen. And
Point
you
per
know
game
what?
last year in the
Yeah,
SHL.
didn't he help them get promoted from the Allsvenskan to the SHL? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he did. So in 2020-21, he was the captain of their team in the Allsvenskan, had 71 points in 45 games to get them promoted back to the SHL. And then, but he
Oh yeah,
left.
then he got the
left.
San Jose.
He left for San Jose after they got promoted, and then he went back to Timrå a year later in the SHL, and he's been a pretty solid scorer for them since.
I know the 21-22 Sharks were bad, but Jonathan Dahlen was a minus 25 in 61 games with the Sharks. I know they were bad. I get it. And hey, he scored. Remember the hot start he got off to that year? Like, it was not that long ago, 21-22, that people were bringing up the Dahlen-Karlsson trade again. Like, what the hell's Linus Karlsson doing for us? Look what Jonathan Dahlen's doing over there in San Jose. Yeah, good for Jonathan Dahlen. He's ripping it up.
It's funny, he was still top 5 on that Sharks team in scoring because of the 12 goals he scored in 61 games.
That's so crazy.
You know who's next? You're never going to guess who's next. This is a name I haven't heard in forever.
Okay, sorry. What are you asking me? 2021-22 Sharks?
Who's the Sharks' 6th leading scorer in the 2021-22 season after Jonathan Dahlen?
Burns is in the top 5. Right?
Yes. This guy was right ahead of.
He's talking about goal scoring. Goal scoring. Yeah.
Just ahead of Erik Karlsson. You're never going to get
Bailey?
it.
Justin Bailey?
No, it's Rudolf Balcers.
Yeah, no, I would not have got that.
And also tied with Erik Karlsson was Alexander Barabanov.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, at least the Sharks are going to be great this year. Okay. Anything else? Oh, wait, did we even intro anyone else? No, I just kind of went into it. Anyone else, which we've basically been doing for the last 20 minutes, is brought to you by the Vancouver Canadians. The season came to a close this past weekend. And I want to thank them for their support all summer long. Take a look at next year's season ticket options. Make sure you don't miss out on getting out to the net like I unfortunately did. For more information, visit CanadiansBaseball.com. And also, we talked about this recently. Remember, we all went to the Canucks Army crew and, Sekeres and Price, all of us. We went to a Canadians game. Jacob went. And I remember saying I had to back out of that at the last minute, and I didn't remember why. Jeff found out after. That was the day that Rick Tocchet announced he wasn't coming back to the Canucks. So I had to work.
Yeah, me too. I had to back out of that as well.
Yeah, there was way too much content to do, so I couldn't go to the Canadians game. And then I remember, Jacob, you were saying that was like the longest baseball game you'd ever been to.
Yeah, it was terrible. So that one was awful. And then one of the longest baseball games I ever went to. And then I went to a C's game about a month and a half after that, where we were done in almost sub 2 hours. I think it was 2 hours and 2 minutes. So
love that pitch.
One more thing with the 2021-22 San Jose Sharks. Who do you think their head coach was? Because I do not remember this guy coaching the San Jose Sharks.
21-22?
Yeah. Who was the San Jose Sharks coach that year?
DeBoer was gone by that point.
DeBoer was gone. So this was a former assistant coach who then stepped up. He coached them for 2 years.
Bob. I'm right?
His name is Bob. What's his last name?
Bugner.
Bob Bugner.
Yeah.
I remember Bob
Good
Bugner as like.
Thank you.
I remember him when he coached the Panthers for a year. I do not remember him ever coaching the San Jose Sharks.
Dude, you give me trivia like that anytime. I love doing stuff like that. Especially like give me trivia from when I started covering hockey because I had huge imposter syndrome. So I was like, I need to know that Bob Bugner coaches the Sharks. I need to know that. So give me trivia like that. I love that. Okay. Anything else from either of you? Jacob, give us another one.
We had not trivia, but we had this from our very own Jeff Patterson this morning.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jacob. That's a good pull. JPat wrote about it at CanucksArmy.com. Quinn Hughes on the ice with his Canucks teammates for what are actually called captain's skates. So it's fitting that the captain's there. Quinn Hughes on the ice today out at UBC. Did not speak with media. He'll be speaking this week as we kind of prepare for training camp. Training camp is next week, folks. We're going to be on the road. It is going to be a really, really good time. Monday, Tuesday, we'll kind of preview it. No show Wednesday as we drive up to Penticton. And then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we will have shows for you. So going to be a lot of content. Make sure you're also subscribed to the Canucks Army YouTube channel because we're going to be doing vlogs from the Airbnb, training camp vlogs, what it's like to cover an NHL training camp. We'll get into the weeds of it all. It's going to be really fun. Going to be a content-filled week next week from us at Canucks Army. Okay. Anything else from either of you guys?
Nope.
Okay, let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day. What did I say yesterday, Jacob?
It was a baseball. It was the Marlins.
Oh, I missed it. I missed it too.
Yeah,
Marlins came to
Nationals.
play.
Yeah.
Marlins came to play. Okay.
How are the Mariners doing?
Fantastic. 6-game win streak. They just tied it for first in the division.
And you can thank the Blue Jays for taking 2 or 3 from Houston.
Yep. And Harm, these games have gone to extra innings. So usually, like all season long, when the games go to extra innings, the Mariners have a really good closer in Andres Munoz, and then they just lose as soon as they go to extra innings because they can't use him, or they've already used him to get there, and they lose because their bullpen sucks. But their bullpen has given up runs, and then the guys go out in the bottom half of the inning, and then they go get more runs and tie the game. Like last night, they tied it in the 10th, and then they tied it again in the 12th, and then they won in the 12th, and it was Harry Ford's first, or one of his first at-bats. I think it's like his third at-bat, one of their top prospects. He hits a sac fly to right field to score Jorge Polanco, and everybody was going absolutely nuts. It was, it was a good time, and I'm actually very excited. Like, okay, this is how excited I am about the Mariners, okay? We're going to a friend's house tonight, and like, we're all going to watch the Mariners game outside, and I think there's 2 Mariners fans at this hangout. There's like 6 of us, but it's that important that we're like wheeling out a TV and we're gonna watch the Mariners game tonight because it's first in the division up for grabs. So you know what? Actually, I'm not gonna bet on that game. We're not gonna touch that. We're gonna take who are the Astros playing? Let's see. I want the Astros to lose. I don't think the cheating Astros are playing. Oh yeah, they are. They're playing the Braves. Okay. Astros are underdogs. We're hammering Braves money line. You can get the Braves money line minus 130 odds over at Bet365. Whatever your bet is, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get it on the game. Use the code NATION at Bet365. Must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. All right. Mark said, if you want to talk crap bullpens, Jays are in the convo, unfortunately. Harmon, take it away. Jays bullpen conversation.
Yeah, man. That little guy is not good enough.
I love it. That's what I said last week as a joke, was Harmon's going to come in and say, Brendan Little is not a setup, man. And you were like, actually, when I watch Jays and 30 at the gym, it's always Brendan Little.
Okay,
going.
I think the fact that him and do they have a reliever named Rodriguez?
Yeah, Yariel Rodriguez.
So the fact that I can only name a couple of their relievers means that none of them are good. Yes. Because that's kind of how it goes. I can name a bunch of their starters.
Yariel Rodriguez has actually been one of their only consistent
like
guys.
Gosman, Bieber. Yeah. I can name a few guys, and I can name a lot of the position players. The fact that they don't have like, if they had stud relievers, I would at least know 1 or 2 of them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, like Munoz with the Mariners.
Yeah, obviously,
for example. Yeah. Well, okay, maybe you not you specifically, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's it. I think we can close it out there. Good baseball convo, boys, to finish out the Friday. We'll be back Monday, folks. Going to be a fun, content-filled week over at Canucks Army and on Canucks Convo, so don't miss it. For my co-host, Harmon Dial, and our technical producer, Jacob Azar, my name is Dave Pedrelli. Thanks so much for the episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.